Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. I'm continuing my deep dive into Everybody Loves Raymond, going episode by episode. Here we are in Season 4, Episode 14, Prodigal Son. Before I continue on, I just want to remind you that if you want to support the channel, you can join the Patreon down below. You'll get access to certain videos early, and you'll also get to suggest topics for future videos. If you just want to do one-off support, the PayPal link is also down below. Prodigal Son, another episode I remember watching in syndication. I don't remember exactly when, unlike some of the other ones. It's probably when I was starting to do my deep dive of watching the reruns on Channel 5 and just saw it randomly one day. This is another one that I understand a little bit more as an adult. I know some of you are going to say, well, get tired of you hearing they say that. But as I continue to rewatch these episodes, especially since it's been a good amount of time, that's going to be the case. Especially considering that I grew up as a Catholic. I consider myself more an agnostic deist now. But, you know, that's still going to be there because it was part of my life, knowing a lot about it. So this episode does hit home a little bit, but it does tackle the opposite end of what they're doing, just surface level. The plot of the episode is that Ray doesn't want to go to church. It begins on a typical Sunday. Deborah's all in her nice clothes. The kids are all ready. They're arguing. Then Ray comes out of the kitchen. He's in his robe. He's eating snacks. Then Robert and the parents come in, and you can tell right away that there's tension there. And this has probably been tension that's been going on for quite a while. How long, we don't know. Because Ray not going to church is a new plot point that has never been mentioned at all in the past. So I'm guessing this is a recent development, probably within the last year or so. The reason I say that is because if Ray had been doing this for years before we started watching the Baron's life unfold, shouldn't the Pope be also guilting him over that? I know he says in that same episode that he hadn't been to confession in a while, but there's a difference between going to speak with the church in the confessional and just going to church. Good. So, probably a recent one. And the look the Frank gives Ray, Pierre Boyle sells us good. It's a very disappointed father look where he's giving him the 5-mile stare and then he just shakes his head. And Marie even does her typical stilt, you know, this is my one regret as a parent. Which, just hearing her say that, Doris Roberts sells an excellent job with it. That's one of those things that you're like, one. Not how you constantly neglect Robert, favorite Ray. Him not going to church recently is your one regret. Well, that sounds like it could be, you know, a decent thing for an episode. But then it's taken to another level when we find out that Frank told Allie that Ray is going to hell because he doesn't go to church. Now, the way that Frank tries to go around it is he didn't directly say it. It's just Allie asked him, what happens to people that don't go to church? They go to hell, sweetie. Which, of course, is a typical Frank reaction, but also Frank being a Catholic is a typical Catholic response, at least to a degree. I mean, there's going to be some Catholics that'll say, yeah, there's more than one path and all that. They're the traditionalist one, and Frank and Marie do strike me as more traditionalist Catholics. So, especially with Frank's personality, him saying they're going to go to hell definitely strikes me as something that he would say. But him saying it loosey-goosey, he still told it. So I understand Ray's anger, especially he goes back and tells Frank not to say stuff like that to his daughter anymore, which you get it. That's something you'd be like, ask your parents. It's not a conversation for me to have with you. I know there's the whole takes a village to raise a child thing, which that Deborah has said before. Which to a degree there is that, but the buck stops at the parents, or if it's not them, their legal guardian. Like in my case, my grandparents. That's where the buck would stop. For certain things, that's what the parents do. Like if the grandparents want to spoil them a little bit when they're over, good, but you don't undermine the parenting. That was a thing my brother and my grandmother always had to butt heads over a little bit when my niece and my nephew were younger. Thankfully, with them being older now is no longer a case. But it's one of those things like, here we get that a little bit, but it doesn't really fully go there because it goes to a more, what are you telling me what to do from Frank, which is typical what Frank would do. Ray and Deborah have a nice little conversation about it, like why do you go to church? You know, Deborah goes there, she wants to get recharged, you know, the whole spirit thing. And why doesn't Ray want to go? he gives a couple answers. One is a physical one. I have bad knees, which probably just an excuse. Because when I was watching this again, I'm like, you have bad knees, yet you play basketball with your friends in a pizza league. It'd probably be worse if it was football because it'd be tackling involved. But you play basketball and you're saying you have bad knees? No wonder you do that. So that one I understand why Deborah calls him out, going, God can hear you right now. Of course, I must also address, they do the whole thing about fat being bad for you. When he brings up the amount of fat in the ice cream, it's like, I don't think that's a bad thing for Ray. I think you might want to look how many grams of sugar are in that ice cream. Probably even more. Probably like around 50 to 60 since it's a small carton and probably a good brand, so there's a good amount of sugar in there. Now, his other excuse raises I can get behind a little bit more. And this is also probably from me researching Protestantism a little bit. And that is, why should you have to go to church to prove your goodness? Now, he goes, I'm living in, tries to make it sound like he's a big martyr, which Deborah rightfully calls out. But why should you have to go to church to prove you are a good person? Listen to the sermon and all that. And, of course, this ties back into Frank saying he's going to go to hell just for not going to church. Who do you think is going to go to hell first of these two people? Someone that acts super pious, goes to church all the time, donates money to the church, but doesn't practice what the gospel preaches, and is essentially just a Christian in name only, or the person who doesn't go to church, does not fully practice the religion, but is a decent person to everybody, is like a good Samaritan, helps people in need, gives homeless people $5 when he sees them, gives rides if some people stop on the side of the road to actually help people. Any other examples you want to chime in there. Who do you think is going to be more likely to go to heaven? I think the person that doesn't go to church is going to be more likely than the person that goes and just does it just to play the part. Now, that is a big hypothetical example there to bring in, but it's something to think about with this one. Is like, of those two, who's going to go? And the reason I bring up the hypocrisy thing is it becomes evident in the final act when Ray does go to church, and then he sees that Frank, as an usher, he spends most of his time in the back and doesn't have to sit in the pews and listen to the service. He only comes out every now and then to collect for that. Now, Ray sees that his hypocrisy, but Frank is like, hey, I'm here, I'm helping the Lord and all that. I'm just doing it my way. But you kind of get it. But at the same time, Frank is being a little hypocritical there. He's getting on Ray, busting his balls, and while they don't address it, probably a little bit of going, Ray, I had to sit in there for years. If you're going to come to church, you got to do it too. But you get it, but it's one of those things like, at least say it then. At least admit you're slightly hypocritical and you're just enjoying the perks after all the years of now being an usher. I mean, like even Stan even points out it took them 20 years to become an usher, so that's how long the waiting list is. And of course, Robert's also on the waiting list to assist if there is a sick call out. And after this, they never really mention Ray skipping church again, so it seems like he is going to be going back. So good thing for him. Look, Frank and Marie, their guilt thing won again in the end, but Ray's going, making an example for his kids, and hopefully become a better person out of this. But by how much, it's like, is he? So it's one of those things we're going to have to wait and see. Now, the epilogue scene is Ray sitting in the pews, getting distracted, which this is one thing I can kind of identify with Ray, where he's describing other reasons why he doesn't. He's going through the motions. As someone with ADHD, sometimes you feel like that. Slow day at work, other things on your mind. You can't get in the right mood in the gym. You don't have the proper gym inspiration. And of course, sitting in church, sometimes it's like, oh, when's this going to be over? Or if you're sitting through a not so good movie, especially in the theater, you're like, all right, when's this going to be over so I can head home or run some more errands? It's stuff like that. Now, they never mention if Ray has ADHD, which I wouldn't be surprised if he is. He's just not diagnosed, and they just didn't want to do an episode about it. Although, it would have been interesting if they had. I mean, sitcoms have tackled stuff like this before. I mean, over on the George Lopez show, they did tackle dyslexia and dyscalculia, which part of me wonders if I might have dyslexia, and I just got over it as I got older. Or maybe it was just my ADHD. I don't know. It's one of those things that I will never know. I think probably it's more like the ADHD. It's just something I can't help but think as I get older. Now, with this final scene as well, Ray sees a guy And I think the joke they're going for here is that from the side angle, he kind of looks like Hitler with how his mustache is. That's the only thing I can think of. And he also has a toupee. It's one of those weird little things, like, yeah, random thoughts pop into your head when you're at church. And of course, the title Prodigal Son does come up when Ray and Robert do have a conversation in the back of the church. And of course, we get another Father Hubley sighting here. Him actually in church holding service. Nice to see. In dialogue, Deborah mentions that Ray and her have almost been married for 10 years, and it's almost approaching that time, which of course will come up in 2 episodes' time. One of my favorite episodes of this season. Oh, that should be fun. Oh, what do we talk about that episode? Ooh, that's a good one. I have a feeling if any husbands did that in real life, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. If any other husbands did that in real life, especially nowadays with the advent of DVR, ooh, probably wouldn't be able to happen now because it'd be a file or whatnot. Now it'd be deleted or the file would be corrupted. Unless you're old school like me and you still have a VHS and you decide just to go old school and have a wedding video. But you have stuff like that. Closest I have is one of the videos over here is my birthday video, which I'm thinking of still converting that. I don't know. Maybe I'll wait for my 35th birthday and then upload that as like the 30th anniversary screening. I'll see. I'll probably have to make sure that it's still playable. But then again, if it's degraded a little bit, you can see that is kind of a charm to it. I mean, that's part of the charm of VHS. Be kind, rewind. In conclusion, The Prodigal Son is a pretty fun episode. It's another one written by Steve Scroven, so another familiar name there. A nice little bit of conflict between Ray and his family. He does concede in the end. It does raise a couple interesting points. Doesn't delve too deeply into any of them because of the runtime and having to go with all of them, but it's enough surface level stuff for you to sit there and think, which is a good thing. And it's one reason I like the episode a bit more now than when I did as a kid. Nice little bit of foreshadowing and some of the dialogue. And of course the ending. It's one of those ones like, that is why Ray does not want to go to church. And of course, next time we're going to deal with an episode that sets up a little mini arc for Robert. It's one of the show's few instances of little arcs. Of course, Robert and Amy dating and their eventual marriage is another one. Some of the other little things. The only other kind of arc like this, which is more of an arc, is going to be a couple episodes' time when Marie and Deborah are not talking with each other, but that's like a couple episodes in a row in the beginning of the next season. Whereas this one, it's going to be a little subplot throughout the episodes that will culminate in the last couple episodes of the season. And that, of course, is going to be Robert's Rodeo. Yeehaw!